mathematician, but at first he was an engineer. His theory was motivated by practical engineering problems. And while it was esoteric to the engineers of his day, Shannon's theory has now become the standard framework for all modern day communication systems, optical, underwater, and even interplanetary. Personally, I've been fortunate to be a part of this worldwide effort to broaden Shannon's theory to wireless communication, increasing communication speed by 2 orders of magnitude over multiple generations of standards. Indeed, the 5G standard is currently rolling out uses not one, but two practical codecs to achieve Shannon's limit. Shannon figured out the foundation for this all more than 70 years ago. How did he do it? By focusing relentlessly on the essential feature of a problem while ignoring all other aspects. The simplicity of his model of communication is a good illustration of style. He knew to focus on what is possible rather than what is immediately practical. And this is actually, I didn't mean for this 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 is a great article, by the way. This Quant magazine, How Claude Shannon Invented the Future. That was a really great read. But I didn't want this to diatribe into the metaphysical, but I completely agree with this statement. I think that, the terminology of first principles gets thrown around a lot, generally by people who are non-scientific. And what I mean by that is that it's not that they themselves aren't capable of doing science, it's that they don't do science. Science is very unforgiving and supposed to be falsifiable and have good explanations. So it's not necessarily that you seek out the first principle of something because it's the thing that sounds the most correct to you. It's the thing that you focus on the essential features of the thing that are kind of immutable, despite you wanting them to be one way or another. I think about that with kind of, the social implications of a lot of the tasks that we do in our day-to-day lives, where sometimes it can feel like, oh man, like I really have to do the pro-social thing right now, or at least avoid the anti-social thing. But I think a lot of the times that's not an immutable thing, because that person that you're talking to also has their own mutable opinions on things that are shifting and changing. So I don't think that it's really that like big of a not big of a deal, but it's not it's not science, right? There's more pseudoscience than there is actual science, because actual science looks a lot like this, right? Actual science looks a lot like, it turns out that you can use electromagnetic signals over analog waveforms. Like that's real science. A lot of fake science is more like, did you know that you could make 30 extra percent of your salary by doing this one thing? Because there's so many things in that macro system that need to stay the case for you to be able to take advantage of whatever the person is talking about. So I think that this is pretty interesting, how he was able to really kind of narrow in on the value proposition of being an engineer and a scientist, while also being able to think about problems in the future that weren't immediately practical, because he knew that these first principles would still be the case 20 to 50 years later, that information would still need to be transmitted from one person to another. So when he wrote this paper, this master's paper in the 1940s, little did he know that 80 years later there would be people streaming Minecraft on in Among Us, making a ton of money basically off of his work and creating this technology. So very cool. Thank you, Cloud Shannon. I appreciate